Good evening, everyone. Tonight, for the first time, we're hearing from the lawyer who's representing a local teenager suing Subway after her boss, a registered sex offender, repeatedly raped her. The victim says the trauma has impacted every aspect of her life, and she's constantly living in fear. WDAY News reporter Matt Henson joins us to explain why it was not an easy decision to file the lawsuit and why this is much more than just money.
Dana, this is the 60-page lawsuit filed in federal court. The girl was 17 and working at a Subway in Jamestown, her first ever job. According to this lawsuit, one of the supervisors there at the time was a convicted pedophile and used the girl as a sex slave for several months.
To relive some of it again, right, and almost be re-victimized.
Brittany Salyers is representing the now 18-year-old woman who lives in Fargo. At the time, the girl was a 17-year-old high school senior working at this Subway in Jamestown by the interstate.
In my years as a practicing attorney, it takes a lot to shock me, and this did.
According to the lawsuit, this registered sex offender, 53-year-old Zeferino Rangel, was hired as the night shift supervisor, often in charge of teenage employees like the girl in this case. Last year, Rangel was sentenced to 25 years in prison for giving the girl drugs and sexually assaulting her nearly 24 times over a period of a few months. The girl claims at one point she became pregnant and Rangel provided her drugs to abort the baby. Some of the attacks happened inside Subway, according to the lawsuit. The girl's high school principal had noticed a change in the girl's behavior and notified police after speaking with her.
And the attacks involved threats to her physical well-being, her life, her family. As we allege in our complaint, the attacks also included being locked in a room, being threatened with weapons.
At the time of his hiring, Rangel was a convicted sex offender and considered a high risk to reoffend. One of his previous victims was 8 years old. Jamestown police even warned the public he was living in the city.
Subway does have a history of hiring or promoting child sex offenders.
Salyers says this is much bigger than just her client's experience, but protecting all Subway employees, especially young teens. She says Subway has a history of promoting child sex offenders.
And coming over to the great taste of Subway subs.
Their former pitchman, Jared Fogle, is serving 15 years in prison for having sex with children. According to the lawsuit, the GM of the Subway where Rangel worked referred to him as, quote, a star employee.
They, as we allege in the complaint, had control over the hiring and supervision practices that went on here. And just because you are a corporate giant with, all the money in the world does not mean that you are free to neglect vulnerable employees.
The lawsuit even claims Subway refused to give the girl her final paycheck because she could not turn in her uniform, which was seized by police as evidence. The lawsuit is seeking $50 million in damages. Corporate Subway and the franchisee have not responded to the lawsuit in federal court. For WDAY News, I'm Matt Henson.
And we called the owners of the local franchise based here in Fargo, but the phone just rang with no option of leaving a message. Corporate Subway told us in a previous statement they could not comment on the lawsuit itself, but they take the teenagers' allegations seriously and call them extremely disturbing.